It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation. Welcome to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and welcome to our family room, and welcome to a very, very special series of 6 programs that's going to take you from the book of Revelation into the Holy Land so you can actually see what the Bible is all about in the land.
These are the supernatural battleground sites in the long conflict in which you and we all play a part, whether we realize it or not. So we thought it would be good to show you exactly what you will see if you choose to come with us when we go to Israel next March.
Oh, yeah.
So for the next 6 weeks, we'll take you from north to south, from Dan to Beersheba, as the old saying goes, and show you what we saw in 2019 as we travel the Holy Land. And of course, when you travel to Israel, of course, you begin on arrival at Ben Gurion Airport, and from there to the place of Jesus' childhood.
That's what we did in the past. We may not do that next March.
True.
But we want you to see exactly what happened to our tour in 2019. So day 1, yes, got on the plane, flew to Tel Aviv.
Met the crew, the amazing crew from Lipkin Tours. Aaron Lipkin was there with his family, his lovely wife Eddie, and their team.
They make everything so easy.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. And there's nothing like getting off that long flight, walking through the various gates, having to show your passport here and there and everywhere, and then you walk through a doorway, and there is Aaron Lipkin with the biggest grin you've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
We're here and getting ready to load on the buses. Everybody's made it, and right now we're just getting our name tags so we can all remember who we are and what bus we belong to. And the adventure begins.
Well, immediately we go to Nazareth, and that was our first stop, our first hotel for the tour. And you'll get some scenes here of what it looked like from the balcony of the hotel in Nazareth.
Mm-hmm.
It is a community that is probably got the largest Arab population in Israel.
Yes.
Outside of Judea and Samaria.
Now, mind you, you feel totally safe.
Oh, absolutely. Well, of course, being in Nazareth, one of the first places you have to see is the recreation of Nazareth Village,
mm-hmm.
which is located, the original Nazareth, somewhere inside what has now become the modern city of Nazareth. There's a nonprofit group that has recreated a first century village.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, even though it's not exactly in the spot where Nazareth that Jesus knew was located, it is similar in appearance to what life would have been like.
The village of Nazareth is immersive, and it allows you to understand what it would have been like to be a member of that village, because there are people dressed in costume. They are performing the same actions that you would have seen. And in fact, one of the many things we saw there was an olive press.
Mm-hmm.
You see olive trees everywhere, and you'll see these in the video that you're watching. Also, you see these beautiful animals, and they're the same types of goats and sheep and things that you would have seen in the original Nazareth. But you also, this is what amazed me, I found a threshing floor.
We're in Nazareth Village, which is a recreation of the first century village, the way it would have looked in the days of Jesus and the apostles. We're standing next to a threshing floor, which we are learning, Sharon and me, as we research a forthcoming book, was far more important symbolically and perhaps even spiritually than we have realized. The threshing floor of Arana, or Ornan, depending on where you find that in the Old Testament, is where David stopped through his sacrifice the slaughter of the Israelites for his sin of requiring a census. But we also find, and of course that was the site of the temple built by Solomon, and the site now of the mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount. But we also find in Canaanite religion that the threshing floor of El, their creator god, on Mount Hermon, is where the spirits of the Rephaim, called warriors of Baal or travelers, in the sense that they travel or cross over from one plane of existence to another, traveled to the threshing floor of El, where he would speak words of revivification to resurrect the Rephaim. This is all part of the long supernatural war in which we are all deployed.
In our book, Veneration, I write about how threshing floors were important not only for communities, but also for communing with the beyond. They were thought of as portals to the spirit realm.
And as we continued through Nazareth, you mentioned the olive press. And of course, Carl held court at the olive press and showed the group exactly how you worked things. And
in fact, they tried to hire Carl, but he said, "Look, I got this tour. I've got to go on." And
exactly, he had responsibilities for his home church back there at Hickory
They were having
Hammock
a
Baptist.
wedding that he needed to be back for.
We're inside a replica, a reconstruction of the olive press here at Nazareth Village. And as we have learned here today, there are a lot of startling parallels between the process of pressing oil back in the first century and the trials, the tribulation that Jesus went through on the Mount of Olives when he went down to the Garden of Gethsemane. The word Gethsemane in the Hebrew actually means oil press, and of course it would have been an olive oil press. Typically there are three pressings of oil. The first press is the one that is used for temple service, the second pressing used for cooking oil, the third pressing, by that time bits of skin and get into the pressing, and it changes the color of the oil to a reddish brown, almost the color of blood. Typically, the process of pressing oil takes about an hour. And as Jesus found as he prayed 3 times on the Mount of Olives in Gethsemane and went back to the Mount of Olives where his disciples were waiting for him, he found them asleep and asked, "Could you not wait even 1 hour?" Many parallels between what Jesus experienced and the process of pressing oil. Just one of the other amazing things that we see as the Lord closes the circle on the stories in the Bible. Nothing that's described in the Bible, no detail is there by chance.
One of the places that is on the tour through Nazareth Village is a recreation of a first century synagogue. And of course, that was the site of a very important, it was essentially the beginning of Jesus' ministry.
This is a replica of the reconstruction of the first century synagogue at Nazareth Village, where Jesus taught, reading from a scroll very much like this one, parchment around 2 pieces of wood, in which he told the people of Nazareth that he was essentially the fulfillment of the prophecy given by the prophet Isaiah. And of course, the people of his hometown were convinced that he was blaspheming and ran him out of town, essentially, sought to throw him off a cliff. But Jesus disappeared, just walked right through their midst, and left Nazareth and went on from there to Capernaum.
Another thing, while we were in the synagogue, it may have been Zev, but someone there was referring to the Bema seat, B-E-M-A. And I sort of nudged Derek and I said, the Bema seat of Christ. It's part of the synagogue. It is where they store the scrolls. It's essentially a representation of judgment.
Significant then that is where he chose to begin his ministry with his declaration. His reading of Isaiah 61 and then saying, "This is fulfilled in your hearing this day," which of course led us to our next location on the tour, as they wanted to take him to Mount Precipice and throw him off the cliff.
I had no idea Mount Precipice was so close.
We didn't go to Mount Precipice last year,
didn't.
so I'm glad we saw it this year because it was eye-opening when you see how it overlooks the Jezreel Valley. This would have been quite a drop, and this is one of the places where Taylor Joseph displayed his courage, going above and beyond the call to get some beautiful shots of the valley below. But this is a place, this is the place where Jesus was dragged by the crowd, and then he
vanished.
Yeah, because it was not yet time.
No, it wasn't. The idea would have been, it was explained to us that he would have been thrown off the precipice and then stoned. They would have just thrown these stones down on him.
Right, exactly. And this is one of the places where the insight of Zev Porat was
incredible.
Yes.
Very important to realize that it was the year of Jubilee. What does the year of Jubilee signify? It signifies our salvation when we come into the eternal Jubilee. This is why Yeshua chose to do this on this event. the fact that the Pharisees, the religious leaders, were so angry and brought him up here. We're not sure if it's here. This is a symbolic place, but they brought him somewhere around here to throw him off the cliff because they understood what he was saying. He was saying he's the Messiah, but he was also saying, I am the eternal Jubilee. I am the shofar. That's what he was saying.
It was so good. And
Next, we moved on to Megiddo.
We're on our way to Megiddo, where many famous battle have been fought throughout history. Traditionally located the site of the Battle of Armageddon. We'll talk about that when we get up to the top of Megiddo.
That's a site that historically has been very important in certain battles because Megiddo controls a pass through the Carmel range, the range of mountains that extends out to the Mediterranean coast and leads onto the Jezreel Valley. Pharaoh Thutmose III in the 16th century BC fought a key battle there against Canaanite city-states that were rebelling against Egypt's authority. In World War I, General Allenby of the Brits defeated the Ottoman Turks there as he led Allied forces toward Jerusalem. Of course, in 609 BC, the good King Josiah of Judah was defeated by the Egyptian army under Pharaoh Necho, mortally wounded there. It's also the traditional site where we believe, or where it has been believed, that the Battle of Armageddon would be fought.
exactly, and you even see markers regarding that.
Far be it from me to disagree with a learned pastor such as Pastor Carl Gallups, but I'm going to. Not to mention risking the wrath of the Israeli Park Authority, National Park Service. What we have in the Old Testament, in Isaiah and Ezekiel, is a clue as to the cosmic or spiritual location of where the end times army, the Antichrist, will come from and where it's going to, which is, this is the audience participation part, Jerusalem.
Well, from Megiddo, we moved on to another important site, historically speaking, but biblically speaking, and that's Mount Carmel.
Very, very important. In fact, your book, The Great Inception, deals with Mount Carmel in a way that I think most Bible scholars don't.
You know the story. Choose two bulls. You guys call on your God to consume the sacrifice. Then I'll do what I do. Why did God send fire from heaven to consume the sacrifice? The storm god of the ancient world, Baal, Hadad, to the Amorites and the Canaanites, is usually depicted in artwork with a club in one hand, a mace, and a lightning bolt, thunderbolt in the other. Boom! Mic drop. God wins.
In the Bible, we're told that these priests ate at Jezebel's table.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean that they had a snack or were invited to dinner. It means they were there for a ritualistic meal.
Very true.
And ritualistic meals had to do with the resurrection of the dead, the Rephaim.
Right.
We left Mount Carmel. And by the way, before you leave, you get to look over and you're told the story. And don't forget that Elijah warned the king, you'd better leave now.
Right, because your chariots are going to bog down, just as happened in the days of Barak and Deborah with the Canaanite king Javin and his general Sisera.
The general Sisera. And this takes us to our next destination.
Right, a site that is not on the tours. We could tell because the sign was not in good condition. In fact, this may have been the only sign we saw in all of Israel that's not in Hebrew, Arabic, and English.
It is only in Hebrew.
Yeah, we had to go through a fence. It was kind of broken down. It's kind of an overgrown area. This was found by the late archaeologist Adam Zertal, who just passed away a few years ago. Aaron Lipkin is really promoting his work because it's groundbreaking. The site is called Tel Al-Awat.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, it was called Harosheth Hagoyim, which means smith or forge of the Gentiles.
Yes, exactly.
And this was, according to Zertal, the probable location of Sisera's fortress, his headquarters, if you will. Its architecture is unique in all of Israel, but it's very similar to the architecture of the Nuragic civilization that we saw on Sardinia last year.
Exactly. When we saw it, when Derek and I saw it, we looked at Yishai, our guide, and we said, we've seen this before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what Adam Zertal found, Professor Zertal found, All right. In addition to the unique architecture of this site was the remains of a furnace for smelting iron. The reference in the Bible to the 900 chariots of iron. Remember, if there's a detail in the Bible, it's important. God doesn't put stuff in there for filler. He didn't give Moses and Joshua and Isaiah and Ezekiel a word count that they had to meet, unlike Tom Horn when he assigns us a book. This...
We'll edit that out, don't worry.
Well, we'll see if he actually watches the Travel documentary.
As you and I were talking about how Sardana sounds very similar to Sardinia and that the architecture appears to be the same, you and I concluded that we had to go back to Sardinia to compare it again to Tel Awaat because this area may well be the same people.
Exactly. The cross-pollination between the lands in the Western Mediterranean and the Holy Land probably began much earlier than the consensus of archaeologists.
When we finished our tour of Tel Awaat, we had to take a group photo, sort of a class picture, beneath the sign, because it was a bit challenging. So I want to commend everyone who went with us because not one person complained, ever. Yeah. And we went some tough places.
We did. It was unseasonably hot in Israel this May.
About 110 degrees.
These sites that we saw were a bit physical, more physical than a lot of tours through Israel, but I think it was similarly more rewarding than many of the tours that go to Israel.
Well, the similarities between Sisera's fortress and what we saw in Sardinia the previous year is just stunning.
It's profound. You and I, without anyone saying, no guide told us this. We just looked at our guide, Yishai, and also at Kudi, and we said, this is Sardinian.
And that was the conclusion of the archaeologist who discovered the site, Adam Zertal.
It was.
Yes. So one of the many things that we discovered as the history of the Bible came alive, and when we come back from a break, we'll take you to a mysterious site that was only rediscovered in 1967.
Yeah.
And but it's more than 5,000 years old. Imagine a wave of terror attacks across our country. Unexpected, shocking, deadly, and provoked by a single email. The government responds with lockdowns and lockups of anyone with unapproved ideas, and they add in mandatory vaccines. That's the premise behind my novel, The God Conspiracy, and your response to our special offer in the month of August was so overwhelming, and we are grateful for that we've decided to extend it. The God Conspiracy plus the theology behind the novel, 12 hours of our video teachings, taken from presentations we've recorded over the last 5 years. 12 hours of video in all on 4 DVDs, all together, a $120 value. We're offering it to you during the month of September for just $35 plus shipping and handling. It's a compelling story that I hope you appreciate, but more than that, the video teachings on the long supernatural war in which we all play a part from Eden to Armageddon. Take advantage of it now. Available online at the Gilbert House store, only gilberthouse.org, and we thank you for your prayers and your support. Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and you know what? Going to Israel is the most... It's a bucket list item for everybody, but trust me, your interpretation, your view of the Bible, your love of the Bible will enhance so much once you go.
One of the sites we saw, which is not on the typical tours, as you'll see in the video, because the roads are really not set up to accommodate tourists, is a mysterious site, a megalithic structure that's been dated now by the most recent archaeological dig to about 3750 BC.
Long time ago.
Yes, before the fall of the Tower of Babel, we believe, and it's a monument dedicated to the cult of the dead called Gilgal Rephaim.
Well, the morning of the 15th, we all went down to breakfast, had a fabulous breakfast. The spread at the Nazareth Hotel is, well, honestly, there's a lot of food there. The coffee there is incredible. Let me just give you an idea. They bring it out in big pots of hot coffee that's been brewed on a stove, and then they pour it into this dispenser, and there's hot milk next to it, plus cocoa powder.
Yes, which we have learned is the secret.
That is the secret. So we all fueled up, and then we got onto the bus, and we headed out to our first place, which honestly, it surprised me that Aaron Lipkin Tours was able to get us to Gilgal Rephaim.
This is on the Golan Heights, which is still disputed territory in the eyes of the world. Not in the eyes of Israel or now in the eyes of the United States.
Oh, praise God.
Yes. The thing that we did not know before taking this adventure was how difficult the road is to Gilgal Rephaim.
Our bus could not go where we needed to go to visit it.
The thing that's surprising, Gilgal Rephaim, for as amazing a site as it is, has not been turned into a tourist site. And so the roads that lead to it are roads in name only. We had to transfer from buses to Jeeps, and actually I feel kind of bad about this because there were some people on the buses who deal with some issues, back issues, and these Jeep rides are not for people who are dealing with back pain.
No, washboard is a kind way to refer to them. Deeply rutted. Sometimes almost the ruts were so deep in the road that it was like driving through a small canyon.
Right.
And the Jeeps, you had to have that four-wheel, off-the-road vehicle. And in future, we want to go there again. We will just let people know because we didn't know.
We will make sure that we let folks know in advance.
Plan on bumping around a lot.
But the site is worth the trip. It is worth the ride to get there because this is one of the more incredible sites. And one of the things we wanted to be sure we saw on this tour, especially with the theme of our tour this year, the search for the Rephaim. Gilgal Rephaim locally is called Rujm el-Hiri, but Gilgal Rephaim essentially means wheel of the giants, wheel of the Rephaim. And when you see it from the air, you see the reason it's called the wheel of the Rephaim. It looks like a giant maze. 40,000 tons of stone went into the construction of this site. That's more stone than was moved to create Stonehenge. Stonehenge, by comparison, is estimated at about 28,000 tons of stone. So this is bigger. It's older by about 1,500 years. The estimated age of this is about 4,000 BC. Now, I know that doesn't track with some estimates of the age of the Earth. We're using the archaeologist standard ages, but it does show a couple of very important things. First of all, that there was a highly organized civilization living in the Golan Heights. This was the ancient kingdom of Bashan, much earlier than archaeologists previously thought. Secondly, and they determined this, by the way, by looking for evidence of civilization or settlements in the area. And they didn't find any in the Middle Bronze Age, which is what they expected, which would have pushed the age of this site to about 2,500 BC or thereabouts. Older, yes, they did find those settlements close enough for workmen to walk to the site, move the stone, go home again at night. Sort of a Fred Flintstone, Barney Rubble sort of construction zone without the dinosaurs, I guess. We think. Anyway.
We don't know.
It suggests also that to the best estimate, best analysis of the scholars, that this had something to do with the cult of the ancestors, the cult of dead ancestors.
I so agree with that. It's interesting walking into there because you do get this sense of some kind of ceremonial root. And if I understood correctly, the current version of Gilgal Rephaim is not the first.
No, there's another circle, a stone ring, older and much larger than the current Gilgal Rephaim configuration
So
that they
stones
estimate.
Were borrowed from that?
Right. The older circle was dismantled to make the new Gilgal Rephaim about 6,000 years ago.
Let's make our maze great again.
Yes. So the older circle, they estimate it being another 1,500 years or 2,000 years older than Gilgal Rephaim.
Wow, so as old as 6,000 BC?
Yes.
That's really interesting because that tracks to getting closer to the time when many archaeologists claim that the Egyptian culture was on the rise.
This is way before the first dynasty of the pharaohs, which
way before that. In fact, some believe that some of the oldest structures there might date all the way back to 10,000 BC.
So as the scholars tried to determine the reasons for Gilgal Rephaim, there, as you look at it from above, you can see there are two gates or entrances to this. They don't appear to be aligned astronomically, as far as they can tell, but they do appear to be aimed toward dormant volcanoes on the horizon. And the only theory that they've proposed, that they've come up with, is the connection in the ancient Sumerian. The word for mountain, Kur, K-U-R, also means netherworld. It's kind of an as above, so below sort of connection.
Very much so.
So there's that. And then there's this shaft, this entrance or this opening in the central core that allows sunlight in, especially directly overhead on the summer solstice.
Well, going down into this chamber which is the lower part of Gilgal Rephaim. It's toward the center. And it's almost like, it reminded me of Sardinia when we went to the tombs of the giants, and you could see where you could actually crawl into them. And the guide told us that the locals to this day will bring their children there, the 12, 13-year-old boys, and they will incubate overnight inside this tomb. It sort of felt like that in there. And whether it was used for that or another, ritual of some kind, or if it was connected to this idea of worship of the ancestors, may have been all of the above. My question not only is when it was built, but why move it? Is it possible that it was moved to realign with something other on the landscape that seemed suddenly significant?
Well, this
The Wheel of the Giants.
Yeah, we didn't want to come out of that central core with the dolmen in there because of
It was about 113 degrees outside, and it was about 70 in there.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we didn't want to leave.
But we did, and the tour continues, as you will see next week, as we explore more of the region around Gilgal Rephaim. If you're interested in this tour video, by the way, it is available at our online store. You can get a copy of the full 2-hour DVD plus extras,
Yes.
including teachings from Pastor Carl Gallups and Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat, who were with us on that tour. You'll find that at gilberthouse.org/store. It's also available as streaming video from our new video on demand site, and we'll have a link at the website too.
On demand?
Yes, that's right, in full HD, so you can see the pictures that we saw in higher quality than you get from a DVD, and you'll find the link again at our website. But
We want to remind you, by the way, if you find Zev Porat's information really helpful, he's going to be with us in March of 2023.
yes, and his research has really been astonishing, much of which is in his new book, Unmasking the Chaldean Spirit.
I know. If you've not read the book, you really need to get it.
Yeah,
you
it's
can get that through the Skywatch TV store.
Absolutely. And we'll be talking with him about that on a future program, probably later in the month of November.
And we got Carl Gallups coming up.
And Carl Gallups coming up too. Yeah, Carl and Zev are dear friends of ours, so we were so blessed to have them with us. And in fact, when I talked to Carl recently, he said, hey, if we ever want to do another tour of Israel with him and Zev again, just let them know and we'll set things up.
I love it.
So that may be in our future as well. Of course, we'll let you know about it, because as much as we enjoy going to Israel and just seeing the sights ourselves, our true joy comes in sharing what we've learned about the spiritual war and the lengths to which our Savior has gone to secure our futures in his eternal kingdom. And those battlegrounds there in the Holy Land, Israel, and over in Jordan are such a key part of that history and your future if you know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. So make that decision today if you have not already. And next week, we continue with our tour of Israel. Don't miss our next episode of Unraveling Revelation.
Unraveling Revelation is a viewer-supported outreach of Gilbert House Ministries. Follow us online at unravelingrevelation.tv and gilberthouse.org. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us through our websites or drop us a line at P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633.